We're in the middle of the halachas of now. If for whatever reason the sound doesn't come over great, please let me know by WhatsApp or Zoom. So we're holding halacha tests, and we're still learning the laws of Sefer Torah. So it says like this: B'simin Chav Dalid, when one learns chapter 24, first law, Nizbar, there it explains the laws. The im nimsa tos bechaser v'yaser. If there's a mistake in the Torah, meaning there's an extra word or missing a letter or extra letter, or kol she'enim mishtana lo yakriyav lo yaperush. In the event that you could still read the word and the meaning is the same, it's just there's an extra letter that's possible. So ein moitzi in Sefer Torah. In that case, we wouldn't take out another Torah. Meaning, if there's an extra letter or missing a letter, you could still read the letter and it has the same meaning. So we wouldn't take out another Sefer Torah because there's a mistake. It's a mistake, but still we would just continue. Mikol Makim, nevertheless, he says, Im nimsa came b'Shabbos. What happens if such a situation happens on Shabbos? That you find the Sefer Torah has one letter extra or missing a letter, in a case where it could still be read with the same pronunciation and meaning. Although we don't take out another Torah to exchange it. But don't add, we said before that in certain situations, one could add aliyos, more than the required 7. But if there's a mistake, do not add more than the required 7. Basically, we go into a form of safe mode, just the bare necessities. And not only that, you shouldn't even call up the person for maftir, which is, so to say, the 8th aliyah that's after, we say usually after Kaddish, which is the person who gets the Haftorah. But in the case where you find the mistake in the Torah, where there's missing or added letter in a way that doesn't affect the pronunciation or the meaning, the 7th person should be the one who reads the Haftorah with the blessings. And you shouldn't say Kaddish on the Torah after 7. You would say the Kaddish then, like we've had in cases before, only after we say the Haftorah and the brachas of the Haftorah, the blessings of the Haftorah. That's only in the case where it's a simple Shabbos. When we say simple Shabbos, what it means to say is that it's a Shabbos that we read the maftir, a repeat of part of the verses of Shvi, of the 7th reading, right? So everyone knows that on a regular Shabbos, we'll read the 7th reading, and then we'll repeat 3 to 4 verses of the 7th reading. That's the maftir. But that's what's called a regular Shabbos. However, but what about in the situation where the maftir is not a repeat of a few verses of the 7th reading, but its own reading because it has an obligation of the day? For instance, if it's Shabbos Rosh Chodesh, if Shabbos falls out on the new month, so on that Shabbos we'll take out a second Torah and read the second Torah, a special reading of maftir that's connected to the new month. Like we spoke before. Of course, you have to read maftir because maftir is an obligation. It's not just the repeat to connect it to the Haftorah. However, what about, so you read the Sefer Torah with 7, and in the case where you have to read a second one, I'm assuming he's talking about where you're using the same Sefer Torah for maftir, it means you only have one Torah. So then you would read the maftir of the obligation of the day, first make the Kaddish, then read the maftir, then read the Haftorah. But however, when it comes to the afternoon, mincha lo yetziu, you shouldn't bring it out for mincha. Better leave the Torah in the ark because it needs fixing, and not read the Torah for mincha. He brings down a source for this. Tshuva me'ava chelik rishon simin nalef. This is the source. And for more information, read the laws in chapter 24, Sif Aleph, law 1. In the footnotes, the second footnotes at the end. Okay. So let's see what he tells us over here. Footnote number 29. He quotes the Magen Avram. Okay, these are sources. 30. I can't see if there's any more. So there's no more footnotes. So it's basically straightforward. If there's a mistake in the Torah, meaning in the mistake in the way where there's an extra letter or missing a letter but doesn't affect the reading, just finish the 7 readings and say the Kaddish after Haftarah. In the event which it's there's an obligation to read the Haftarah like a Rosh Chodesh, etc. So then you would read the Haftarah, the Maftir as well, but don't take out this Torah for Mincha. And it seems like he means even in the case where there is no other Sefer Torah. Okay. Law number 10. What happens in the case where we bring out 2 Sefer Torahs and we have 2 Torahs? So in the first law, we mentioned that there could be a special reading for the second, for the Maftir. That's in the case where I guess you have 1 Torah. But let's say you have 2, you're meant to read two from 2 scrolls, and you take out 2 scrolls. And you find a mistake in the first Torah. Again, these are things that happen, unfortunately, but it happens. However, whatever the reasoning is, but it happens. So it says, meaning to say is that it could be the paint peels or what have you, or the last time it was checked, someone missed something. But it happens all the time, unfortunately, especially with the old scrolls, where there could be a situation where there's something wrong, so to say, in the kosher of one of the scrolls. So in the case where you take out 2 scrolls, and for whatever reason they found something wrong with the first Sefer Torah, and you have a third one, if you want, in the Orna Kodesh, in the Ark. So you're thinking, what should you do? You took out 2 scrolls. 1 scroll you took out for the first reading, let's say, and you took out a scroll for the second reading. In the first reading, you find the mistake. You have 2 choices now. One is to just switch quickly to the second scroll that's already out, but that second scroll was taken out and is waiting in the place for the second reading, let's say Rosh Chodesh, or you have a third scroll in the Ark. So you're thinking to use the second scroll and later bring out a third scroll for the second reading. So he says, Lo Yasakain, don't do that. Means don't use the second scroll for the first reading and then bring out a third scroll for the second reading. The second scroll has been prepared to read Maftir, and therefore you have to read the Maftir from the second scroll. The same thing would apply if you bring out 3 Torahs and you have the same problem with one of the readings. You have to read the reading, better to read the reading from what it's prepared for. Meaning to say, so he doesn't finish off what you should do, but I'm assuming what you should do in this case is to take out from the Ark the third Torah and read the first reading. So too, what happens if you thought there's no mistake in the Torah, but this could happen obviously if there's a mistake. You made a mistake. You took out 2 Torahs. You had one prepared for the first reading, one prepared for the second reading, and by mistake you switched. You lost track of which one is for which, and you put the second reading on the table first, on the bima first. First you took for the first reading what was prepared for the second reading. So what do you think? Maybe quickly, just you have it on the table, maybe move it to the right place and read from that Torah because you already put it down. There's a concept here. The concern here he's not mentioning, but the concern here is a lot of things. There's when people see you taking a Torah on and off and not using it, people may think something's wrong with the Torah. Here, there's nothing wrong with the Torah, it's just you took the wrong one. So he says, don't read from it. Is Yigalguhu, roll it back up. V'yichos Hashem, take the second one, which was really the first one, and read it for the first reading. Better to read what's been prepared. So because you had 2 Torahs prepared in the right places, you just by mistake switched them. That could happen if the covers are similar, etc., or someone made a mistake, forgot which one. That's why if you go to an organized synagogue, which most synagogues are, when the Gabbai and the Shamish, the ones who are attending the shul, their job is on the day before the reading, whether it is Erev Yom Tov or Erev Shabbos, to prepare the scrolls, that everything should be organized, that they don't make these mistakes. Number one is, for instance, when we go to my synagogue where I pray, when you come in a situation where there's 3 or 2 Torahs, they'll have little silver plates that someone sponsors very nicely. One will say Maftir on it, and one will say Kriya Rishon. So when the person is taking out the scrolls, the people know which one has been prepared for the first reading and which scroll has been prepared for the second reading. So that's one of the things that a synagogue has, is little plates that are hanging on a chain, like a little silver plate. That's something that you could decorate beautifully. The Torah means to do it in a nice way. Zekeli vanveo. The idea is we always try to make something beautiful in a mitzvah. So this is one of the ways to beautify the mitzvah of a Sefer Torah, is they sell, someone sponsors or the shul buys nice silver chained plates that they hang on the scroll that will indicate which scroll is meant for which reading. But in the case that they made a mistake, or they didn't do it, what have you, and you took out by mistake the second scroll for the first reading, don't read from it, roll it back up, put it back to the person who's holding it, and take back this first scroll to read for what was been prepared. Okay, there's no footnotes on this. So there is missing a few points over here. For instance, he doesn't mention if you're supposed to take out from the ark a third scroll when there's a mistake. Evidently, that's what you would do. Okay. Law number 11. Seder HaChiyuv. This is an important law. I'm disappointed Aaron's not here because he stands by the bima, so he usually wouldn't be following this. But here, and this has led to, unfortunately, a lot of difficulties in the synagogue, is when, and this is the challenge of every gabbai, right? What's a gabbai? Gabbai is the one who has to give out the callings of the Torah. So who comes first, right? If you're a member of a shul, one of the benefits of being a member of a shul, male or female, is that when you have a day of importance for you specifically, the attention is given, whether it's a yahrzeit or a simcha, a bar mitzvah, a bas mitzvah, that the shul will make events, obviously in a halachic way, to meet the members' needs. So especially you have a synagogue which has, Baruch Hashem, a lot of members, plenty of members, and if it's a shul that has people that have different chiyuvim, different obligations, whether it's a yahrzeit, birthday, simcha, etc. So how do you decide who gets aliyahs first? Who gets first? If you're only giving, especially in Chabad, where we only give out 8 aliyahs, meaning 7 on Shabbos, 7 reading, and then 1 of the maftir. So the Gabe has a challenge if there's going to be a Shabbos where there'll be a lot of guests. So what we'll do in our shul is, if it's in a crucial situation, because we have many Sefer Torahs and we have other rooms, there is situations where we'll take out 2 Sefer Torahs on a regular Shabbos and do a second reading in another location. Or we'll ask someone to wait for mincha. But a lot of times, a lot of people, unfortunately, where there's issues in shul of people getting offended, etc., is when it comes to these questions of who gets an aliyah first. I wanted aliyah. I wanted maftir. If there's only a Kohen and a Levi, 2 Kohanim and 2 Leviim, or more that all have chiyuvim, how do you do it? How do they have obligations? So here, the halacha is going to tell us the preference, who gets first. How do you decide who gets an aliyah first? Okay. Seder hachiyuvim hakoidem koidem. How do we decide who takes precedent in the obligations when it comes to aliyahs? Again, for instance, if you're going to have, let's say, a widow, and she's going to want her son to have an aliyah for her father, it means, again, if you're, and then there's differences, by the way, I don't know if he mentions it here, but there are differences if you're a member or not. If a person comes to a shul and he's not a member of a shul, or she's not a member of a shul, and wants certain recognition, the shul is, if they would like to, can accommodate. If you can, you should accommodate. But if you can't, a member comes before. That's usually what the shuls do. And there's countless issues. I just was dealing with an issue in Jerusalem where someone left the shul because he didn't get the aliyah. He didn't get calling up for his father's yahrzeit that he wanted. Okay. So Seder Chiyuvim, what is the precedent? What's the halacha? What's the law say? Aleph, number 1, the first person that has a right to an aliyah is chasan. This could be on a weekday as well. Is a groom b'yem chupasai, obviously on a weekday. on the day of his wedding. So if a groom is on the day of his wedding, again, this is, you have situations where you have, hey, Aaron, I was just talking about you. This is a law that would be connected to you. Now we're going to the precedent. Who gets an aliyah first, right? In a large shul, everyone wants an aliyah because everyone needs an aliyah. Who gets first? So the halacha tells us the first aliyah goes to is the chasim b'yem chupasa, is a groom on the day of his wedding. He's number one. Number two is beis, the chasan, a groom, and this is Ashkenazi and Sephardi have different halachas. V'Shabbos lefnei hachasana, on the Shabbos before the chasana. So the Shabbos before the wedding is what we call the ufruf, when the chasan gets called up to the Torah. The chasan specifically in the Chassidus, it talks about why. It's specifically on Shabbos. Let's say the wedding's on Tuesday. So the people in the synagogue could say, okay, just get an aliyah on Monday. No, there's an idea of getting it on Shabbos, because Shabbos is connected to every day of the week, whereas Monday is not really connected to Tuesday. So therefore, the chasan on Shabbos before the wedding will get, he's number two after the chasan on the day of his wedding. Shemizamrim loy, that's the everyone sings, that's called the ufruf, it's a special day, they throw candies, the custom is. The anishu bacher, and this is in a situation where he is hasn't been married yet, I believe that's what he means. Yes, provided he's never been married. So we're talking about someone who's been called up for the Torah for the first time. Means if we're talking about someone who's been married before, and this is a second marriage, doesn't make a difference if it's divorce or a widower, then doesn't have the same precedent as a chasan getting married for the first time. In number two is nar shenase bar mitzvah b'osei shvua, is also a bar mitzvah boy who had a bar mitzvah that week. Obviously, he was already bar mitzvah. So if your bar mitzvah was any time in the week before, you get the chasan who has a wedding and a bar mitzvah boy are on the same level. Hey mashavim, they're equal. Okay, obviously the gabbai has to decide in a situation. Again, it may sound like uncommon, but in places like New York, where there's hundreds and hundreds of boys in 770 in Chabad getting married, it's very likely there's more than 10 grooms in 1 week. So every single aliyah could go to a groom. It happens almost every single week. Because in Chabad, the custom is we like to get an aliyah in the Rebbe's shul. So people get married even all over the world. They try to be by the Rebbe before their wedding. And you have many situations where every single aliyah goes to a chasan, goes to a groom. Okay, so number one is, or bar mitzvah boy. So the bar mitzvah boy and the chasan who's married for the first time, a bacher, they're equal, they have equal rights, number two, to the chasan who's getting married on that day, to the groom getting married on the day. Again, that would be in the week, obviously. Sandik, number three, is the sandik b'yom hamilah, is the person who's honored with holding the baby on the day of a circumcision. That could be on Shabbos if there's a Shabbos circumcision, or in the week. So number three is the sandik, the one who's being honored in carrying the child during the circumcision. He has third precedent of an aliyah after the groom on the day of the wedding and after the bar mitzvah boy and the groom of the Shabbos before the wedding, provided that the groom is getting married for the first time. And he describes what does it mean to sandik, because some people have different definitions, standing or not standing, carrying. This is the one who's holding the baby during the circumcision. That's who the sandik is. Okay. Number four is the second sandik. He calls him a sandik, the one who holds the baby on the day of the bris. What we call in Hebrew the kvater. The couple, right? The custom, you go to a bris, you go to circumcision. The woman brings the baby, a married couple, or a brother, sister, mother, son, that have to be related usually, that they have the couple that brings the baby into the bris, into the circumcision. He calls that also a sandik. So that person also should get an aliyah. I never heard of this, that the person who's a kvater should try to get an aliyah. He's number 4 on the list. The one who brings the baby into the circumcision.
Who is he?
Whoever you honor.
No, I'm saying what is why did he get it? What does that mean?
The baby's in the mother brings the baby to the synagogue or the hall where you're having the bris, right?
Right.
So it happens, the baby has to make it from point A to point B. There's an honor that we give to the couple that bring the child into the place of the circumcision. It's called the kvater. Here he calls it the sandik. that person, that couple, so the woman will give it to the man. The man comes in, he's honored to bring the baby to the precision of the circumcision.
Okay, so real quick, this is after the Cohen, and these are the laws. I mean, these are the list in order after the Cohen and the Levite.
No, well, if one of these people are a Kohen and Levite, they get Aliyah before any other Kohen and Levite.
But if they're not a Cohen, then they're after those two.
Yeah, so that's a good point. That we'll get to that in a second. Let's put a pin on that because it's a good question. Let's just go to the list of chiyuvim obligations. There's no obligation because you have synagogues will ask, only provided that the Kohen allows, ask the Kohen to leave the shul. We'll do that sometimes in our synagogue where it's really cramped with people that need aliyahs. So if the Kohen is willing, and people don't like that sometimes, a lot of Kohanim don't like that. But if there's such a situation, they may sometimes ask the Kohen if he minds leaving the room to make space for other aliyahs. But if the Kohen has any objection to that, the Kohen always comes first, and then the Levite. Okay. So number 4 is the person who brings in the baby. Number 5 is Bal Hayoledes Sheyolda Bas Vayleches Mes Knesses. In the case where a father has a daughter and going to name her, so he is number 5. So you already have this could be a regular Shabbos in every single shul. Number 6 is Bal Hayoledes Sheyolda Ben Vayleches Mes Knesses. The father who had a son. It's not the day of the circumcision, but we make special Misha Beirach for the mother, for the health of the child. That's number 6 on the list after the daughter. V'im einin harchas beis haknesses, ein haba'olim chiyuvim ela imhu yem harbayim ve'echad lezachar or yem shmoin ve'echad l'nekeva. Sorry. This is talking about where the wife of the husband comes to shul. So the wife, the custom is that after a woman has a child, she goes to shul, she hears Kedusha. If that time she comes to shul when she has a daughter, her husband on her behalf gets the aliyah number 5. After that, the precedent is aliyah number 6 is when the yoledes, the woman comes, the wife, the mother comes, her husband will get the aliyah as the 6th, he's number 6 on the list when she comes to the shul, but that's only when they come to the shul. So here he makes a difference, because although we do have the custom that when a woman has a baby, and especially when you want to name the baby, the girl, depending, each people have their custom, how long they wait to name the daughter. In our custom in Chabad, we name right away. So, and if you could have a baby on Thursday morning, if the husband could find the minion, he'll name the baby that morning. My son did that last year, and obviously the woman's not going to be there; she just had a child. But in that case, he doesn't mention that on the list. But if in the case where she comes to the shul, her husband gets an aliyah, she has number 5. And she has number 6 when it's her son. That's only if she's in shul. But if she doesn't go to the synagogue, so the husband ain't abayim chiyuvim, then the husband is not considered a person who has an obligation. It's called the obligation to get an aliyah. Elim hu arboim yom lezacher, on the 40th day of having a male child, or yom shmoin ve'echel and keva, or the 41st day. It's the 41st day of yom imei tahara, of the day that she's pure blood. So that on the male. So even if she's not in shul, he would get an aliyah on that day. I've not seen this practice where men get an aliyah on the day of the 41st day of the male, unless I haven't seen it. Or the 81st day, if she had a female and she's not in shul, nevertheless he should get an aliyah then, because that's when the woman transitions from being dam tahara to dam tmeya. Okay. That's when she should bring her carbon. A woman has to bring a sacrifice after she has a child. So when does she have to bring the sacrifice? She brings the sacrifice for a male on the 41st day, and she brings the sacrifice on the 81st day for the female. So that in that day is when the husband should get an aliyah. Number 7 is a chasin shahaisa chasinase mi'im reviv eilach. Okay, so here we're talking. This again, Sephardic custom is, I believe that the ufruf, the calling up of the chasin, is the Shabbos after the wedding. So here it says that on the list, number 7, is a groom whose wedding was any day after Wednesday. The Shabbos shalachar achasan, and the Shabbos after the wedding. And this is conditioned on either him being a bachar, means he never been married, or she being a virgin. In that case, then he gets an aliyah seemingly separate than the Aliyah he got the week before. Yes.
I just want to say something to what you said. I know the Syrians because I kind of followed it because of my wife. We did it before the wedding. Some people do it before, especially if you're going on your honeymoon right after.
Okay. Now, the cousin Ashkenazim do it before. Some Sephardim, I believe, do the Ufruf afterwards.
Right,
Okay.
right. They do it after because they want to be able to do it as one of the 7 days that you have those special meals and the special prayers.
Okay. Now, it's funny, if you go to Shul, this list that we have from 1 to 8 so far means the first 7 people on the list, and they're really 8 people because Bar Mitzvah boy. People don't pay attention to that. When someone comes to the Shul and demands an Aliyah, it's usually the yard site, and that yard site is only number 8 on the list. Means if you're in a Shul and there's members, and one person's a sandik and another person has a yard site, people get very, very personal if they do not get an aliyah on a yard site. So far, if all these people were to show up to shul, it's unlikely a yard site would get an aliyah. So number 8 is Yoim Hashana yard site by B'Yoim. Number 8 is the yard site of the day, not the week, but the day. If that day is the day of a yard site, that person is number 8 for his mother or father. I believe also would be for his father-in-law, mother-in-law. Tes Avi Hatinuk B'Yem Amila. Now again, sometimes the father would be the person carrying the baby. But in the case where the father is not carrying the baby, he gives that honor, the couple gives the honor to someone else. So the father of the child who has a circumcision, he's number 9 on the list. Number 10 on the list is yard site Shahayilai B'Shvuah Shlachar Shabbos, is the yard site that you're going to have after Shabbos. So if people like to get an aliyah on the yard site, is you have a yard site next week. The Shabbos before yard site is not the day of the yard site, but the Shabbos before the yard site is only 10th on the list. 11th on the list is the Mohel B'Yem Amil. This is the person who's giving the circumcision, right? The Mohel. Number 12. Number 12 is the Sandak. We said Sandak before. Is the one who carries. So in this case, the sandik. In the case, what's number 12? So number 12 is on the list is the sandik, and then the father of the child having a circumcision, then the moyel in the Shabbos before the bris. I mean, it's not the day of the bris, it's the Shabbos before the bris. Even then, the sandik, the one who carries the baby, then the father, then the moyel in that list. In that order, if there's an available aliyah, should get an aliyah. Shnei balach yuvim shavim toldi b'das haskan oyatilu goyrel. He says, what about if you have 2 people that have an obligation? So then it depends on the gabbai, or they can make a raffle. I think we do in Chabad, we do a raffle in getting an aliyah in the Rebbe's room because there's many people that want to get an aliyah on a regular Shabbos. Misha ein la iroinais. He says that a non-resident, so I told you before, a person who's not a member of a shul, ironis means from the word ear, not a member of the city, can't push anyone off who has an obligation before that person. You can't come into a shul that you're not a member or you don't live there and demand to. We're not talking about paying membership. Because to say that only paying members could get an aliyah, non-paying members, that you have to look in the shul's bylaws. But if you just show up to a shul and say I want an aliyah because it's my yard site, it's my father's yard site, God forbid. So then you could if they want to give you an aliyah, they can, but they don't have an obligation. It doesn't push off anyone else. Is also a custom that if someone's about to leave town. Obviously, this is less common today because people fly so often. But in those days when people were leaving town less often, if you're leaving town, you should get an aliyah. Or someone who came from a traveling also, till today that we try to give someone an aliyah. Also, it's proper and the custom to call a important guest. If an important guest shows up at your shul, don't ignore that person. Give that person an aliyah. That, of course, is a custom till today. But that person doesn't come before a person who has an obligation. So if you have, and this again, this is where a gabbai's job gets very sticky because most people who get into fights in shul is about this law. when I didn't get my aliyah that I wanted. I'm a member. I daven here every Shabbos. What level of membership do I have? What can I expect from the shul? The shul says you're not paying dues, so you don't come before this person. I have a yard site. I should come before a person who has a birthday. All these things that are in Chabad. Also, a birthday boy gets an aliyah. All these things is, for instance, by Chabad, we get an aliyah the Shabbos before a birthday, not just for ourselves. If you're a father, you get an aliyah for all your children, for your wife, right? So if Baruch Hashem, I have Baruch Hashem 6 children and my wife. So there's 7 times a year besides my own birthday, we get an aliyah in Chabad before birthday, a week before birthday. Some people will say once your children get married, so the husbands should get for the daughters, and this boy, if he's a bar mitzvah, should get his own aliyah. But if possible, I still try to get an aliyah even for my married or bar mitzvah boys. Yes, Aaron.
In our shul, and I don't know where it goes on the list, but when people come back from a dangerous trip, like they're flying over the ocean, or they were in a car wreck or something dangerous happened and they survived, they also give them aliyah and they let them say a special prayer.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yes, and that's another thing. Okay, so we basic again. There's a lot of many times there could be situations where people get offended. He does say that, and again, there's bylaws of shuls. Some shuls will be very clear in the laws of what you could expect if you come to certain shul, whether you pay membership, you don't pay membership. If there is membership, how often do you have to daven there, etc. Some people want to go to a shul and they show up, right before yard site and expect an aliyah and get upset if they don't get the aliyah, and obviously, the Gabi is going to say, well, you don't really come to shul, and there was no extra aliyahs for you. Obviously, when you can't accommodate, you always accommodate. But the halacha, the reason of this halacha is very important, is to tell you clearly this is who comes first. Okay, so number 31. Let's try to go through the footnotes. So we finish all the footnotes here. The source of an order of precedence is the Levush. So he says, who gives this list is the Levush. He's a commentary. Also see Magen Avram 282. The list in Kitzur Shulchan Aruch differs from his. Okay, so the Kitzur doesn't have the exact list. I mean, what we just learned now is not the list as it is according to the Magen Avram. I have to check what the Alter Rebbe says. Every locality follows its own custom. And here he says, again, at the end of the day, is every place has its own customs. Literally, this is, if there's one thing that causes, unfortunately, machlekes, disagreements in a shul, is these laws of when people get offended, they don't get an aliyah. Okay, provided he has never been married. So we're talking about a groom is number 1, right? Did we say a groom is number 2 on the Shabbos before his wedding? This excludes a widower or who remarries. Doesn't say a divorcee. But a divorced man, I would assume, is the same thing. I'm assuming. Okay. Number 33 is the husband of a woman who's given birth to a girl when the mother comes to the synagogue. Number 33. Okay. A husband whose wife gave birth to a daughter applies only when the girl is given a name. Okay, this is what I said before. The name in conjunction with the father's aliyah. It's not what the law says. It's not exactly. The literal translation of what the law says is the husband of a woman who gives birth to a girl when the mother comes to the synagogue. And naming and the mother coming to the synagogue are not necessarily at the same time. A woman, again, the Chabad will name the baby right away. That's usually the mother's not in the synagogue when we name the daughter. And the mother coming to the shul is another time. He seems to put it together. Okay. I'm not sure what the basis of that is. Number 34. Unless it's the 41st day or the 81st day after a boy, when a woman has to give a carbon in temple times, when a woman had a baby, she gave a chatas, a sin offering, brought by the woman who gave birth. And to understand why a woman has to give a sin offering after a baby, we'll learn those laws when we get to them. But there is such a law: a woman who gives birth, gives a sin offering after she's had a child. Number 9 is a father of the baby on the day of a circumcision. Okay, now the father is only number 9. The father of the baby comes after one who has yahrzeit, because he will get an aliyah on the day his wife goes into the synagogue to levush. So he says, why does the father come after the yahrzeit? Because he'll have another time to get an aliyah, which is when his wife comes to shul. Again, the wife coming to shul seems to be the point over here. I'm not sure where he says over here the idea that the day the naming is. Okay, number 36 is the moral on the day of circumcision, or the sandik on the father of the child on the Shabbos before. Okay, I've never seen these. A lot of them are not practiced today. Not necessarily does a person know that he's going to be sandik. He's going to hold the baby during the circumcision on the Shabbos before. That information sometimes is given only to the person on the day of the circumcision. Okay, where we're holding over here is two people with equal claim to an aliyah should depend on the discretion of the president of the synagogue or the gabbai, or they should decide to cast lots. 37, Simag and Avram, again, he says, prefers adding aliyahs if possible. That's when we add aliyahs. The Nachlas Shiva says, if two people have an obligation, just add aliyahs. But again, that's in the places where they add aliyahs. Chabad does not add aliyahs. Number 38, okay, what are we holding over here? Writes it's customary to honor an important guest by calling him up for an aliyah. So an important guest comes to your synagogue, it's customary to honor that person with an aliyah. Other persons so honored includes a widower remarrying. Okay, so widower remarrying, he seems to hold a widower remarrying, we said, is not on the list. So he comes all the way down to the bottom of the list. Parents of a bride and groom who are getting married, okay. Persons reciting the bracha of a goimel, this is what Aaron said. So he's on the bottom of the list. Someone who has to make a gomel, who has to be thankful for either a crisis that happened or was avoided, or to come from a long trip. One who dedicates a Sefer Torah is also on the list. If you give a Sefer Torah, you have a right to an aliyah. One who moves into a new home, that's a new one for me. If you have a new home, you're entitled to an aliyah. Important elders and members of the Chevra Kadisha, people who are part of the committee. The Holy Committee, that's the committee that usually deals with most things of the community, but specifically with things of burial. On Yom Tov, so they should get an aliyah. On the day of Yizkor said, the one who blows the shofar should try to get an aliyah. These are all customs we have today. The one who blows the shofar on Rosh Hashanah should get an aliyah. And the chazan of Musaf gets an aliyah on Rosh Hashanah. All these do not have a priority over persons listed in the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. He says, although these are people of importance, meaning the one who blows the shofar, the one who davens, the one who comes back from a trip, from the Chevra Kadisha, all these things are important, but they don't come before an obligation. Okay. Many congregations sell the aliyahs and do not follow the order at all. See Chassam Sofer. Okay, here we go to the question. Again, that's a complicated question. In the event of the shul that wants to raise funds for the synagogue by selling aliyahs, is it right to sell aliyahs? Let's just be practical. It's my shul in Jerusalem, because we have a lot of guests that come from out of town. They're not members of the shul. A lot of them are Baruch Hashem blessed with the abilities to give nice donations to the shul, and the shul survives on their donations. So in what case is it right for the shul to sell the aliyahs in the case that they're overlooking someone who has an obligation for an aliyah? So obviously that has to be taken all into account. Yes, Aaron.
In the Syrian shuls that I've been to in Brooklyn, they all auction off at least all the parts to the going up and taking out the Torah and all that. And I think most or some of the aliyahs, but if there's someone who needs it, then they'll give it to them. And usually everyone gives a donation anyways in the Syrian shuls. In my Ashkenaz shul, they give donations. They know the people who can, and they ask him, or the guy will tell them that they want to give a donation, but they don't auction anything off ever.
There's different customs for different synagogues.
But on holidays, where they read Torahs, they'll auction off every part of the Torah, and each one gets their own big, huge amount. They could go for thousands of dollars.
Yeah, again, it all depends on what is expected when someone comes to the shul. If you dive in the shul that survives on the aliyahs, and they need the monies to keep the shul open, and you have a chiyuv and you're not a person who's able to give, again, this is where the gabbai has to use common sense and be respectful and sensitive in all situations.
I mean, if someone needs it, they're not gonna. If someone's getting married, they paid in advance. So they make a deal with the rabbi and that's it.
Okay, so I'm saying this different. Every shul has its ways, but the reason why we have the halacha is when people come to shul. Again, literally, I just had a situation here in Yerushalayim where someone left the shul because he didn't get an aliyah on his father's yard. He didn't get mafter in his father's yard.
All the
Okay,
Syrians know this. They respect it, and they say that's why we can do big things in our shuls, and that's why our shuls are big and beautiful.
all right, fair enough. But it has to, again, some people, everyone has to be, and also the people who have an obligation have to figure out, plan ahead if they know that they daven in a shul that may not give them an aliyah. Any questions from anyone else? We finished the topic of Torah. Anyone else has any questions before we move on? We'll try to do one or two laws on the Haftorah.
Yeah, just I'm just wondering, like, I mean, I know it's for like l'shem mitzvah. I know it's for a mitzvah, but isn't that like a business transaction to like sell aliyahs and talk about money on Shabbos? And yeah,
Listen, I want to say something. A lot of people, he mentions the Chassam Sofer. So we have to look at the truth of the Chassam Sofer. I'm sure that's being discussed about monies in the shul, but the fact is, like, there's two things. Number one is, when you come to shul, people expect certain things from the shul, whether it is the air conditioning running, the lights working, it's being cleaned, having all the books it needs, and that doesn't just appear out of nowhere. And the only real time you're going to get certain people to participate, especially when you have guests coming through, is going to be on Shabbos. So again, there's a tshuva. Obviously, there's a tshuva Chassam Sofer who deals with this question. I understand, and a lot of people don't like it. A lot of people don't like to come and they come into shul, they feel it's not proper. They don't like the time being spent on it. I get it. It's annoying. But you have to remember the shul has to exist. So and then you expect yourself things from the shul. If the kiddush is nice, the food doesn't just appear. So you have to understand that there's costs to run an institution, and there's different ways to raising those funds. Listen, this always makes people uncomfortable, and there's certain people that specifically will not go to a shul if that's like a big part of the shul is that experience of the money involved, and they're like, this is not for me. And that's why, again, if you live in a city like Yerushalayim, New York, where you have options, you're entitled to go to other shuls. There's certain shuls that will never ever. You don't even. I've been to shul. I think once in Pretoria, South Africa. My son learned their smicha, where there is no such thing as mentioning money, even by Misha Berach, even if you wanted to. They never give Misha Berach. They don't. They if you want to give money, that's private, but they will not mention money in the shul. So the certain shuls that are very, and the kiddush is raised obviously before. There's a committee. They have funds. They have people pay membership, and they do not want people to talk money in the shul, even at a Misha Berach. Even if you wanted to give Misha Berach, they will not mention money. So there's different customs in different synagogues.
In some of the synagogues, because you said about time-wise, and because you said some people don't want to talk about money, so they'll put a price, only on the holidays that they do this. They'll put a price tag on the thing, and it says anything not sold will auction off on the day of the time that we need. But he says that it could go for less, it could go for more. So if you want it and you don't want to have to waste time, just buy it in advance and let's get this over with, because this is how the show runs. And
some places by the Rebbe, they sold mitzvahs. They sold mitzvahs by the Farbrengen on Shabbos Bereshis, and they sold mitzvahs on Simchas Torah. It's called selling mitzvahs. It's even brought down in Shulchan Aruch that it's a big schus to buy, for instance, the holding of the first of the Torah. You don't, if you're a woman, you could also buy it and designate someone on your behalf. But to buy, it says not to hold it, to buy the right to hold the first Torah. By the Kol Nidre, it says it in the Machzir. So at some point you have to sell it. Some places are able to sell it in advance. Some places are not able to sell in advance. The shul is not set up that way. Some people don't like that it's sold in advance because they say it's a under the table sale. You could in 770. Sometimes you would see shuls where you could tell it's an under the covers. Before anyone has a chance to say anything, they quickly mention numbers and say sold. Well, 1 second, I wanted to buy it, but so there's people want the opportunity, and it says clearly there's a mitzvah to buy the first Torah. So that's brought down in the Machzir. It says it clearly. So there is the concept of money that's mentioned, and this is Yom Kippur. Even holier in senses than Shabbos. I hear what you're saying, Rebecca. And again, if you go to a shul and it's overdone and it's too much, it's not. People have left shuls for that, and for less than
half an hour in the Syrian shuls.
Okay,
at least the minimum.
And some people don't like that. Spend that time.
But I'll tell you, in Israel, when my son was going to yeshiva, they know they don't have any money. So they auctioned off. You're going to do a mitzvah. Who can do more mitzvahs than the next guy to get this aliyah on the holiday?
Yeah. When I run sometimes on a Shabbos Chol Hamoed, I'm the fifth string quarterback. So if 5 people don't have to show up to shul when I get put in to have the obligation to give out the aliyah, since it's usually a bad situation. There's barely 10 people. So if I'm that person and it's a Shabbos Chol Hamoed, where then I'll reserve all the aliyahs for locals who don't have the ability to get aliyahs because they're selling for a lot of money. Okay, but everyone has to be sensitive in what they can do. All right, let's just do 1 or 2 laws on Haftorah. Now we're learning the laws of Maftir. Maftir and Haftorah, that's the person who gets called up for the final aliyah and is honored to either stand or make the blessings on the Haftorah, depending on the custom of the shul. So he says like this: Koidem shekoidem the Maftir. Most synagogues, I just want to say, when you have schusim, we call them mitzvahs. We sell mitzvahs. When you have mitzvahs, so sometimes the women feel a lot. Even in our shul in Samach Tzedek, it's a Hasidic shul. Women do bid. We hear the women calling out from behind the mechitza. Women do bid, and they honor obviously someone that, whether it's a child or someone that they designate on their behalf. So it's not the idea that if a woman's in shul and she feels that I'm not involved in this. I don't know how other shuls are, but in the shul that we daven in, women do bid from behind the mechitza. Okay. Koidim shekoidim the maftir, or they'll give someone a budget to bid on their behalf. Koidim shekoidim the maftir, ayrum chatzi kaddish. Before we call someone up for the maftir, we say the half kaddish on the Torah. If you have 2 Torahs, in the case you have 2 Torahs, we place 2 Torahs on the table. Aaron would know this when we make the Kaddish. Both of them are on the Amud, on the Bima. But what happens if you have 3 Torahs? So you read 6 Aliyahs in the first, moved it, means you picked it up, someone's sitting with that. Now you have the 7th reading, and between the 7th and the 8th reading you do Kaddish. The first one doesn't come on the table, it's only the second 2. The second and the third. When does the person, right? Everyone's getting antsy. The person who has the Haftorah, who got Maftir, who says the Haftorah, has to make the blessings before the Haftorah. When should one start saying the blessings, the Haftorah? Only after the Torah that's been lifted up last has been rolled and covered with the Sefer Torah covering. While that's happening, do not make the blessings. Okay, that's something that some people are not always so careful with. Let's just see. We have footnotes number 1 and 2. Okay, just the quotes. Let's see over here. Maybe it's not so simple. So you have to wait until after you cover the Torah. He says, Meseches Sota, this is brought down in the Talmud, see Rashi, but Pri Megadim, which is on the commentaries on the Shulchan Aruch, says that it's customary to wait until it is pulled up, but it is pulled up but not tied. So once you don't have to wait till it's being tied, just closed up. Again, it depends on the custom. Chabad, for instance, we roll it up before we sit down. The reason given by the Shulchan Aruch 147.7 is to allow the Golile to hear the Haftorah, because the person who's involved in closing the Torah is not going to be able to listen to the Haftorah because he's busy closing up the Torah. The Be'er Sheva suggests that the reason is to show that the Torah is superior to the Haftorah. So first, we don't move on to the Haftorah until we completed giving the service to the Torah. By avoiding the appearance that the bracha on the Haftorah is being said on the Torah. Another is also that it shouldn't be that we think we're saying the bracha, the blessing, on the Torah itself. Okay. Let's just do one more law. The bracha rishayna lifnei Haftarah. So I'm going to take out the siddur. So we make different blessings on the Haftarah for different, depending on holiday, Shabbos or Yom Tov, different holidays, etc. So the blessing is like this. So you have the the blessing. So he says like this. What he wants to point out over here is the law is like this. The bracha Rishona, the first blessing you make on the haftarah before we say the haftarah. So la'achar hanemorim be'emes. So ein oinim amen. It's one blessing, right? We say Baruch. This is the blessing. I'm going to read it. We say Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech ha'olam asher bachar b'neviim tovim. One who's chosen his good prophets. V'ratza b'divreim. He's happy, satisfied with their words. Hane'emarim be'emes. That's been said with truth. Don't say amen there, because he continues the blessing. Baruch atah Hashem baruch b'Torah Moshe avdei b'Yisrael amo ibn vi emes v'tzedek. Blessed is Hashem who chose Moshe, the Torah, the Jewish people, and his true prophets. Then you say the amen. So he says, in the middle of the blessing, we don't say amen until you finish the full of the blessing. Means there's a blessing, there's two blessings we say within the blessing. We open with the blessing and we close with the blessing. It's called psicha v'chsima b'bracha. It's all one blessing. We brachas achronis, so too the final blessing that says Baruch atah Hashem tzur kol elamim, etc., and it finishes off Baruch atah Hashem hakel enem l'chol devarav. That's all one blessing. Only say amen after the final blessing. V'chein b'brachas Hashem b'brachas achronis ein oinim amen acher emes v'tzedek ki im neman atav v'chulu, until after he finishes off the whole blessing itself. Okay. It's all one blessing. Because some people are not knowledgeable of this law and they say amen in between. Don't slow down. Keep the pace so no one should have really time to say amen. So people shouldn't be confused to think that you've finished the blessing. Basically, we have sometimes halachically blessings that start with the blessing and end with the blessing. You don't say amen until you finish the blessing, right? So therefore, make sure that people don't think it's two blessings. All right, let's do the footnotes on this. Footnote number 3, he says, not to make any pauses. So he says like this, number 3, the custom of many Sephardic communities is to pause after emes v'tzedek, whereupon the congregation responds, nemanata. Okay, so we know that the Sephardic have customs where they say things within the blessing. So although the Shulchan Aruch, the Kitzur says just to go fast through in the first blessing afterwards. So he says the Sephardic is they do stop after emes v'tzedek, and they say, so everyone could say nemanata, about the truth in God. Okay, but that's a custom in Sephardic. All right, let's stop here. Anyone have any questions before we finish the class? No? All right. Well, thank you all for joining. Lila Tov, thank you, Barbara, for sponsoring the class again tonight. And
thank you, Rabbi. I'm learning so much from all this.
Thank you. You're welcome. I'm learning with you. Lila Tov, everyone.
Very much.
Thank you.